A lot of people think about creators in a different class of people, but at the end of the day, they're experts in their field that you hire because of their expertise. Why would you intervene? I just don't understand it fully. And I feel like that's very specific to creators, not necessarily traditional celebrities, but creators alone, where you're going to hire them, you're paying them money to do what they do. Why would you step in too much and make something look so inorganic that it makes no sense on their channel whatsoever?
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ. Here's Conor Begley.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Earned. Today I've got RJ on the show. Welcome to the show, RJ.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I am really excited. I think both because I spent a lot of time looking at your background, and it's just like we actually haven't hit entertainment as a category as much as I wanted to. And then secondarily, you're doing this LinkedIn thing like a rock star too, which I've been, trying to do myself. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. I will say that it's my favorite social platform for myself, and it's the only one that's a place where I post anything publicly at all. And it has been so helpful in general in my life so far and has connected me to so many opportunities. So I'm happy that it's working and resonating in some way.
And for those that don't know you, just to kind of give them an idea, so you are currently the VP of Influencers and Talent Marketing across a few different entertainment properties. So Nickelodeon, Paramount Plus, Awesomeness. Tell me a little bit in terms of that role and what you're focusing on. What does that entail? What are you doing day to day across those properties?
Yes. So I am taking creators and I'm putting them in every part of the ecosystem within Paramount. So that can mean voicing an animated character on a Nickelodeon show. That can mean sending 350 creators to Kids' Choice Awards this year with a bunch of different opportunities baked into that. It can mean the brand partnership side of things where we're partnering with major brands and some of our main IP to do these traditional influencer brand deals, putting creators in scripted. I mean, it's really anything with a creator, both behind and in front of the camera, in a variety of different opportunities. So I'm essentially trying to take a traditional media company and figure out ways to work with influencers beyond one-off transactional brand deals.
The thing that's really interesting about that, at some level, right? Like you are competing with Mr. Beast for eyeballs, right? Like as an organization. But the collaboration between you two, not Mr. Beast, but say creators and Nickelodeon is very powerful. One, how have you seen that evolve? Because you've been in the talent game for 10, 15 years, something like that, right? So you've gotten to see this thing evolve. How does that interaction between the two work? And how do you think the entertainment company's opinion has changed towards creators over time?
So I think that people needed to embrace creators way sooner, especially for properties that hit a young audience, because influencers are modern celebrities for kids now and for teens and for everyone, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. That's just 100% the truth. So we sometimes see even a bigger reaction to our work with creators than we do with traditional celebrities. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is years ago, someone like Paramount would be competing against other major media companies. A brand like Nickelodeon, I think, would previously be said to be competitive with Disney in some way. Or when Universal has had Universal Kids or a brand like that, now our competition is really social media platforms. And so gaming, that's another thing. So we have to be where all the kids are, where all the teens are, but also in a separate, very safe way where we're not targeting kids that are too young to be targeted. So it's an interesting balance. And that's part of the reason why I love doing it, is because kids' behaviors change the quickest. And I always want to be on the cutting edge of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's been really interesting just thinking back on Nickelodeon specifically over the last handful of years. I feel like it had really fallen off the map for me. And then I feel like it's really surged back over the last few years. And I think even looking at, like you did this massive SpongeBob installation at the Kids' Choice Awards that was, built by a creator who does this kind of thing. I feel like that creator strategy you guys are doing has to be part of the reason that Nickelodeon has come back to prominence in some ways.
Everything that I think about is what is going to excite a creator, because you can tell when something is a hashtag ad. No one wants to watch it. They skip past it. So what's the way to work with creators where you take them and what they already do and you amplify it in a really big way to help out the brands versus coming up with creative that doesn't necessarily make the most sense and trying to pigeonhole creators into it? You can do both and both can be successful, but I have found more success taking what a creator's already doing, taking something that they already love to do and then adapting it to us versus taking something that we think is a good idea and adapting it to a creator. I try to take this on every single campaign, whether it's a straight brand partnerships deal or something we're doing to market a new Nickelodeon show. I have so much fun thinking, is a creator actually going to want to do this, or is this going to be a paycheck? And if the answer is that it's just going to be a paycheck, I don't want to do it, and I don't do it. So it's cool. If we're going to send a box out to creators and have them open it, what makes it so cool, the coolest thing that they've ever seen before, that they're going to want to post, that they're not going to feel forced to do it? So Kids' Choice Awards invites, I think, are a great example where I found a creator who had already was 3D printing SpongeBob objects on social media. Her name is Emily the Engineer. She's amazing. She does a lot of other IP, but she loves SpongeBob. So we were sitting there talking about invites, and I was like, why don't we just reach out to Emily and see how much it would cost for her to 3D print them? So we got the quote. It was good. So we had her 3D print all of the invites this year. Then I was like, how do we make it even cooler? So we got Tom Kenny, who's the voice of SpongeBob, to voice the invite, completely custom for these invites for creators. And then we put them in this really cool box that looked like it was shipped from Bikini Bottom. Because the idea would be, if you just get a regular box, you're not going to open it. If you get a box from Bikini Bottom, that's going to be the first thing that you open if you're the right creator, which a lot of people posted this more than we've ever had before. So they open it up, they see the magic conch shell that we had 3D printed, they read the note and see that a creator made this, and we're celebrating creators who have been making SpongeBob content, and then they pull it and it's a custom Tom Kenny voiceover. That's something people want to open versus sending some random box that has something random in it that a creator is just going to give to their assistant or someone else is going to open at the agency. It's never going to make its way to the creator. I want everything we ever do with the creator to make it impossible not to have them share it.
Everything you're hitting on is what we've seen be consistent across brands that have done this really well, which is like lean into the community that's already part of your community, right? They're already fans of SpongeBob. Invest in them, right? And then when you invest in them, not only is there authenticity to that, but then it becomes aspirational for other people who go, oh, wow, maybe this will happen for me too, right? Maybe Nickelodeon will work with me as well. And so I want to support them, right?
Well, and the great thing after the Kids' Choice Awards was so many people reached out and they said, I had so much FOMO, I want to be there next year. And that is a win to me because we can never invite every single creator. That would be a very packed Kids' Choice Awards across the board. We wouldn't have the audience space, but I want people to feel inspired by what we're doing with creators enough that they want to be a part of it. And whether it was representatives reaching out or talent reaching out directly or even posting about it on LinkedIn and seeing people get so excited about it, that's like what drives me. That's what keeps me up at night in a good way. I need to be enthusiastic about everything we do with creators. It's not an option for me to be like blasé about it. How do we blow this up to be so big no matter what it is? Whether I would be at different brands, whether I'm here, like that's something that won't stop in my DNA.
I'm curious, knowing that, again, you've got limited tickets that you can send out, what criteria did you use in picking those 350?
So this year was interesting because of the SpongeBob lens. And so we bucketed people. Who are the people that have been posting about SpongeBob big and small? So we invited some of the biggest creators that have posted multiple SpongeBob videos across the years. So we invited them. I also wanted to make sure that we were also reaching out to mid-size and smaller creators. So we invited this one creator who has 20,000 on Instagram who does SpongeBob nail art because she's an incredible fan and we want to give back to that. So sometimes it's not having 20 million, 30 million people that follow you on social media. Sometimes it's just being a dedicated enough super fan. So we had a big range of people that were there. And then outside of that, we invited all of the zeitgeisty families and teen creators that really means something to the audience and means something to parents that are introducing their kids to Nickelodeon. So there were a few different buckets of people. And then from just the invites, then we have things like slime testing, where we bring creators on stage to test out the slime at the venue. Every year we do this. And it's very exclusive to creators, very limited amount of them. So then that's an opportunity. We put creators making SpongeBob content in the commercial breaks in what we call retention bumpers in between the actual show airing. We did 3 separate live streams with 3 different influencer sets of hosts, with 3 different sets of influencer guests. And so there are also in-show moments too. So with all of it, it's not just that we took creators, invited them to something, had a step and repeat, hope they post. We figured out really cool ways to get them involved everywhere. And my favorite is something you pointed to earlier, which was we had 4 creators build SpongeBob creations, essentially, that were in their vertical, and we helped them top every video they've ever done before. So Matthew Beam built a 25-foot tall SpongeBob. He built it in Denver, Colorado, physically drove it in trucks out, and they assembled it at the site. And that was more than an influencer brand deal because it also had to make sure that it was safe. So we had to follow all the regulations in Santa Monica. It was at Barker Hangar. That's an airport. So it couldn't be too high. So there were a lot of factors involved that went beyond a brand deal. Aquarium Info has built a ton of SpongeBob aquariums. We had her build one 100 times the size that she's ever built before. That was the impetus of the entire strategy around SpongeBob 25, was taking creators who have embraced SpongeBob, which is very known, very memed IP, and having them do what they love to do around it. SpongeBob is the creator, to the point where we even had him be a featured creator at VidCon this year. So that was a fun one, and we had him there for meet and greets. But that was another way where it was like, SpongeBob is the ultimate creator. He's memed very frequently on social media. So why wouldn't he be at VidCon? Why would he not be a featured creator? So we worked with VidCon, who Paramount owns, to get SpongeBob there. And they did a big announcement. It did really well on social. And then his meet and greet line was very long. So it was really exhilarating and probably like one of the top 3 moments in my career, if not the top.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I love how integrated it is, like the multiple live streams, the build outs, the invites, keeping people engaged throughout the process. Like it was at every layer of the event, which is really cool. How is it different for Paramount Plus versus Nickelodeon? Like what's different in terms of approach?
So I think Paramount Plus is just targeting different audiences. And so I'll work on projects that go beyond kids and family, but sometimes they are kids and family. And I think it's just harnessing a different type of creator. A lot of what Paramount Plus produces is based on really popular IP. So we're working on something with Star Trek right now that won't even come out until 2025. But that was another situation where Paramount Plus came to me and said, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And we created a series around a creator and something that they do really interestingly that fits in with Star Trek in a different way. And they've never done anything like that before. So a lot of times for Paramount Plus, it'll be a brainstorm of, hey, what are you guys trying to accomplish? And then my mind or my team's mind goes into, well, if this is what you want to do, we should do this and we should do this. And this is something so unique to Star Trek that no one else can do with this creator. And let's bring them in. Let's do a deal with them. Let's get their ideas, have them inform the format, have them inform the content. In this circumstance, it's a project in which we're helping ideate. The creator is scripting everything. It's going to live entirely on the creator's channel. But on top of that, they're editing it. So they have their in-house team editing it so that it feels like their content. Versus us saying, hey, we're going to write the script for you. You're going to have to say it verbatim. We're going to edit it. And then we're going to put it on your social platform. And it's not going to look like the other content. We don't want that. We want something that it fits in with what the creator does. I say this all the time, but creators are experts. They're many media companies. You have to trust them. You cannot get involved too much. It's a difference if it's a kid's property and the creator swears a lot. Like, obviously, we can't have someone doing that. But I feel like a lot of times the people who work in the creator economy get in their own way instead of trusting people that are experts and It drives me crazy personally when I see people trying to get involved way too much on something when all you need to do is give them the broad strokes, the must-haves, and then you let the creator just do what makes them successful. But Paramount Plus is just interesting. It's even for some of the newer properties that we released, I get super stoked about them. Like I worked on something very cool. The show was one season, but for Fatal Attraction, when they brought that back, I worked on this really cool event with Vanity Fair in New York that was very different than something I would do for Nickelodeon or do for the movie studio. So it's a really great opportunity that I love to work on because it's different IP sometimes outside of kids and family, a little less preciousness sometimes about the IP. Like you can take some more risks there where with kids content, you really can't.
I mean, when you survey creators, that's like their number one complaint is like when they lose control over the content, right? Because ultimately it just doesn't hit.
A lot of people think about creators in a different class of people, but at the end of the day, they're experts in their field that you hire because of their expertise. Why would you intervene? I just don't understand it fully. And I feel like that's very specific to creators, not necessarily traditional celebrities, but creators alone, where you're going to hire them, you're paying them money to do what they do. Why would you step in too much and make something look so inorganic that it makes no sense on their channel whatsoever?
Yeah, I think this blending of the kind of more traditional media, like this happened, I think you went to the White House, right? And
I did.
I just had Jim on, Jim Louderback too.
The best. I love Jim Louderback.
Jim's great. I just did a podcast up with him. He was also at the White House. He was saying like, yeah, you know, they had the creators, right, which was you guys here. And then the press was like, you're over here. Like, you're not getting the same level of exposure. And I was like, oh, that's really weird. Because the reality is I think that creators are journalists in their own regard, just in a different way. It's interesting to see those worlds kind of merge over time.
Well, this is how I felt about that, because I was 2 rows in front of the press team. So I heard the interaction back and forth. And what Biden had said was, these creators in the room, I want them to ask questions. This is their time with us. The press gets so many other opportunities to talk to President Biden. This was time for the creators. And the press, they gave some parameters to the press that the press weren't following, but they were very clear about it. Like, we're not ignoring the press, but there's an audience here. They are here right now. We want to open this up. And I thought the most interesting thing about that was that President Biden was supposed to be there for 5 minutes, and he was there for 45 minutes. He stuck around, and he actually answered questions for people that were specific to the creator economy. And I really appreciated that because, as he commented multiple times, he said, my grandkids get their news from social media.
Yep.
That is not a diss to the press. That's the truth. The press needs to be better on social media then. So to me, it's not a slight against the press. It's that the press needs to update what they're doing. They should hire creators to work for them in a traditional capacity, and they should send them there. That, I think, would actually be a great way to advance a very archaic institution. Like, we have a show called Nick News, and it's been on back in the day. It's won a ton of awards. Linda Ellerby used to host it back when I was a kid, and it talked about very adult topics, but they talked about them through the lens of the kids that were listening. We brought that show back years ago to do a COVID special that Kristen Bell hosted. Then we did a special on race in America that was incredible. And then we brought it back. And then I got involved about 2 years ago. We hired creators that were over the age of 18 that felt like the cool older brother and sister to our audience, who were giving Gen Z and Gen Alpha the news on social media to be our correspondents. And we changed the format of the show to feel like it was a social media feed. So instead of it being one single topic the entire episode, it was, oh, we're talking about food technology. Oh, we're talking about immigration. Oh, we're talking about interesting school structures. And the show changed when we had creators hosting it. So I feel like traditional media companies, traditional news companies have to embrace this sooner rather than later because they're already late to the game. We did it for Nick News. CNN, why are they not adapting this? Why don't they have younger or even older creators that have big social media followings doing some of the work, not taking over every anchor's job, but the White House was an example of that. Instead of complaining, you guys should have creators there in the room to be able to ask the questions versus like random reporters screaming out some questions. So I'm very happy with how this White House has embraced creators. I'm excited and encouraged by the DNC, how many creators they invited there. And I think that the DNC specifically is being very smart about how they leverage creators. So I'm hoping that the media companies, instead of just being irritated and complaining about it and like then writing articles or doing TikToks about it, it would just embrace this feeling, because creators are not going to go away. People are not going to watch them less. They're going to watch them more. That's the reality. So you really have to adapt with, I'd say, modern times, but it's really been going on for 5+ years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even we've been in business for 12 years, right, in this space. But I think that, yeah, particularly on the press side, right, that tension, right?
This is like the thing about influencers is I work at a traditional media company, but in like the most modern way that I could be working there and infusing what's happening right now in the creator space there. I think every company should be doing this. Otherwise, in 5-10 years, they're going to be completely lost. And I think like there's no excuse anymore, even if it's just hiring 1 or 2 people for their brands to go in there. Journalism can't be competitive with social media. Journalism has to embrace social media, just like working for a traditional media company. It doesn't have to be competitive. It can actually supplement each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think like with the information, I think it was there too. Like I don't follow the information, but I follow Kaya, right? The woman who covers the creator economy. And I think that even occurs with brands too, right? Like for his faults, like I don't follow Tesla. I don't follow SpaceX, but I follow Elon, right? Like, and that I think perpetuates across all brands, right? There's nothing unique about that, including media entities. In that vein, let's talk about you as a creator, right? So you've got this burgeoning creator career. We're already at 15,000 followers and growing, which on LinkedIn, it's also like a fairly potent audience, right? These are executives. These are generally fairly high-powered people. Talk to me about what made you decide to start creating in the first place. And then second, you talked at the beginning about some of the impact it's having on you. What have been some of the impacts? What have you observed in terms of how it's changed your life?
Well, so first off, I have such imposter syndrome with the idea of even being called a creator. It's
same.
Oh, you as well? Okay. So there are some talent people that really want to be in front of the camera. I don't. That's not my aim whatsoever. That has never been my aim. And so it's interesting because I don't consider myself to be a creator. I consider myself to be somebody who works in a job, who talks about a few different buckets on social media to help hopefully, it depends on the topic, but like get people to change their behavior, get people to do better at what they're doing, essentially. Like I don't think of myself necessarily as a content creator, but I guess in technical terms, I am. So I started posting on LinkedIn because I was not in the traditional corporate space for the beginning of my career. I was freelancing. I was working on casting a bunch of reality shows. And when you're doing that, there's no structure. You're not taught how to be a leader. You're not taught how to act in a corporate setting. And I can be honest with myself saying that when I led a team of 13 people, when I was heading up casting for Dance Moms in my early 20s, did I know how to be an effective leader? No, I didn't. And there were probably mistakes that I made or things that I did incorrectly. But all I had were random figures above me who were not concentrating on leadership. They were concentrating on casting a show in the moment. And so when I got into the corporate space, first off on the production company side, then over at Disney ABC, then in the tech side of things at Pop Sugar, now at a very corporate place like Viacom, then Viacom, CBS, now Paramount, I was like, there are so many people like me. And what I noticed in a lot of different corporate settings, not only in the job that I'm in now, was a lot of behavior in the workplace that felt very old school, like what you'd see on Entourage. And workplaces don't have to be like that, and I don't want them to be like that. And so I initially started posting because I noticed behavior in the corporate environment, and I was like, how do I fix this behavior without causing drama? I started posting about the bad behavior that I would see on LinkedIn, but with lessons about how to go around that. And my tactic was that the person who is doing this would see the post. They're never going to confront me on the post because they'd be admitting their bad behavior, but they're not going to do that behavior again because they think that I'll post about it. So I consider myself to be the Taylor Swift of LinkedIn, where I'm trying to curb bad behavior, but in like the least way possible to cause corporate tension. So I, at one point, not in my current job, had a colleague who I would say is incredibly abusive. And I talked about abusive behavior, and that post really resonated because that topic resonates with so many people, whether it's in the tech startup, or you work at a restaurant, or you work in a corporate setting, or you work directly for a creator. There are abusive people, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. And not only is it going to foster a negative workplace, on top of that, it's actually going to cease creativity, productivity. So it's bad for business. And so I started posting for that reason. So a lot of people in the beginning thought I was talent acquisition, not a talent casting sort of person. So I started posting about that. And I was like, I want to post about leadership in a really big way so that people who are abusive in workplaces understand that that is not acceptable, that workers understand that that is not acceptable on the lower end. And my goal was to essentially, by using LinkedIn, change everything. Because I feel like we're in this intermediary period where Gen Z has different ways they like to work, especially post-pandemic. Then you have the very old school Hollywood, where you have people that have worked at a company for 20, 30 years that believe in a very old school way of doing things. It just doesn't cut it anymore. And so I get very passionate about making sure that the workplace evolves over the next 5 or 10 years. So the next generation of leaders understand what is acceptable behavior, not acceptable behavior. And then they can actually figure out how to solve it on their own or not accept that behavior and get out of really bad scenarios. I was at a company in the past that was extremely abusive, and it sucked away all of my self-confidence, and it took years to undo it. And the thing that I know now is I'm very good at my job. There are ways that I can remind myself of that when I'm having imposter syndrome or feeling negative. But I was in an abusive relationship with my workplace multiple times in my career. So I don't want any person who is ever in their late teens, early 20s to get into a workplace and accept that behavior, because they do not have to. There are plenty of places that don't have that behavior, and there are ways to modify your current working situation to put up boundaries and to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's where I started. And then I started talking about creator economy as well, because it's so important to me. So I really talk a lot about leadership. I talk about creator economy, and there are a few other buckets that I really get into. Creator economy, more self-explanatory why I'm posting about it, but a lot of it is about the leadership side, because I just keep seeing bad instances of this and I want to stop it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So one of the other people we had, Leah Hopperman, who's also like...
Oh, yeah, was at the White House. Yep.
Yeah, she was also at the White House. She started this newsletter. She's like, the main reason I started the newsletter was I wanted my boss to read it. Like, I wanted to give her feedback, but she wasn't good at taking feedback. So I could basically include it in the newsletter, and then she'd read it, but not take it as a direct personal attack. It was just more like things she wanted her to know, right? It was similar, kind of how it got started. The thing I'm curious about, well, two things. You know, I started writing, and it's only happened to me once, but I had one time, they're like, you got to pull this down. I'm curious if you've ever had to run into that, like things that actually got you in hot water. And then second, you know, you're at 15,000 fans, and there's a certain amount of like rock rolling downhill that continues, where like you keep going, you know, you'll be at 20, 25,000, keep going, maybe you're at 50,000. Is there a point at which you would consider being like, I guess this is what I'm going to do? Maybe I'm a media entity, right? Maybe this should be my business. Is that something you've thought about at all?
Yeah, so I'll start with that question first, which is no.
Yeah.
I love what I do so much that I want my day job. Even if I became a millionaire, I would still work in the creator economy and I would still do what I do. And that's just the truth of the whole thing. So I think what I would maybe consider doing would be like trying to like develop coursework in some way online to like teach people these sorts of things, or I mean, the thing that I would love to do, honestly, is go and speak about this sort of thing in a bigger way. So beyond like influencer panels and things like that, I love talking about that. But going and talking about my personal story and how I got to this point and what's important to me, I would totally do those things, but I would never eliminate working. I love, again, what I do so much. And that's not just because people at my company are listening. It's the truth. I've always been that way. It's easy to tell when people are fraudulent about it. And like everyone in my life knows how much I love and care about what I do, not in like a sick, twisted way that consumes me, in a way that I just love it so much that I love just doing it. The question about pulling down posts, I've never been asked to pull anything down. I think that there was a moment where when I was trying to figure out what my voice was on LinkedIn, I was posting a lot about negative scenarios. And I think that there was some level of concern that like my voice might be a little bit too negative on social, but I never heard that really directly. And I actually didn't agree with that whatsoever. I was just talking about a lot of topics that people weren't willing to talk about, but I haven't really posted anything that would get anyone in trouble. Even in scenarios where I'm talking about a specific person or a specific instance, just in general, it still is a very broad lesson. I've talked about people being yelled at in the workplace. That hasn't happened to me at one job. That has happened at multiple jobs. So that's something that I know is super relatable because people, especially my age, grew up knowing, if you go work for an agency, your life's going to be miserable and someone's going to yell at you and it's going to be very entourage. That's not the same thing anymore, but it resonates with people. It resonates with people when you have conflict with a coworker. That is something everyone is going to have in their career. You're going to have conflict with someone and you have to figure out how to put up a boundary but still exist with this person. That is a big problem that is not company specific. So I think that's the way in which I've never posted anything specifically targeted at whatever company I was at in that moment. I will say one time, I posted a LinkedIn post about a prior job that sucked away my self-confidence. And I had posted a screen capture from a deck. And the person who ran that company reached out to me and said, I remember this deck. Let's talk about this. And she had already known that I had had grievances in the past with the way, not that she ran things, but that lieutenants within the company had run things. And she did her best and eventually made a lot of changes to make the workplace not that way. But she saw it and she didn't want me to pull it down. She wanted to reach out to say, I'm sorry again. But no one's ever asked me to pull something down. But I've done a lot of work to make sure that nothing that I'm posting is so specific that someone would have some sort of grievance currently with what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to invest that time in that. To go back to kind of impacts, I'm curious, have you seen any changes? Are you getting more speaking invites? Are you getting involved more internally? Obviously, you're generating a ton of exposure. I'm curious like how that's manifesting in terms of your life.
Yes. I mean, the reason why I like LinkedIn is because it's about the future, really. That's the truth, is I want people to understand, number one, I'm a great leader. And I want people to be that way. Number two, I love what I do in the creator economy. And there are ways in which I've been innovative that I think are hopefully inspirational to other people at other brands to do that and to make the space better. And also, I want people to know that I am a creative. And those are the sorts of things that I do. And here are really cool wins because I'm genuinely proud of the work that I do and that my team does. All of us, our minds are all trained in the same way and they get what influencer marketing should be or how to work with influencers. And so I want, again, to brag about those things that we do that are really cool, that generate a lot of buzz, but also I want other brands to see what we're doing, be inspired by that, because that just makes the creator economy better. And so I have definitely received more speaking requests. I have definitely gotten asked to do more panels. I've definitely got asked to be involved in big conversations. The White House was a great example where you had to apply to be a part of it. But when I met with the White House, they were like, oh, we're already familiar with you because of LinkedIn. The amount of times that I go somewhere and they're like, we've not met yet, but I know you because of your LinkedIn posts and thank you so much for what you do. Or recently Paramount went through pretty mass layoffs and I did a post that went very viral that was just trying to help out the people that didn't have jobs, that were out of work. So I invited people to post what job they were looking for, their resume, everything in the comments. And that was mind-blowing because the amount of messages that I received of people trying to step in and help, the amount of people that commented trying to help other people that had just been laid off was amazing. And that's the community that social can foster. But because I'm not trying to be a TikToker or a YouTuber or an Instagram person, I've never really felt that community. That wasn't really my goal. But for LinkedIn, that community is there in such a big way. So I'm really happy that these opportunities are paying off because I want other people to also be inspired by that, also post about their experiences, also post about the wins in the creator economy. That just helps everyone out at the end of the day. There's more than enough jobs in the creator economy. There are more than enough cool things to do. I'm limited in the brands that I work with, but there are beauty brands that could use some of the tactics that we've used to do something so cool. There are sports brands that could do it. So I found it to be extremely beneficial. I found it's fostered community in a really big way. I like to try to have the conversations people are willing to have. Like today, I did a post about networking and how no one actually really wants to go get a drink or dinner with you. They just don't. That's the reality. They want to go home and be with their loved ones or spend time with their dog or watch TV. We're all too busy. So here are modern ways that you can network with people to feel like you're doing that and getting to know people and making deals better and doing all of that without having to step foot outside your house. And so I'm not saying don't go to dinner with people that you enjoy, but 99% of the time someone's asking you to get a drink or a dinner, they don't want to go with you. They want you to cancel. They want to have that thing come back. But after the pandemic specifically, I feel like people learned what was valuable and important. So today that was my post, and maybe some people wouldn't say that out loud, but I like to say the thing that people are thinking. That is where I've had success and where I think the posts have done the best is when I'm talking about that.
Totally. So I want to do one fun kind of end of show question.
Yes.
Oh, if it's fun, I'm just fascinated. So you suffered a near-death experience when you were 9 during open heart surgery. My mom actually, flatlined on the table at one point too and came back during childbirth, which is kind of crazy. I'd love to know, what was that experience like? And separately, actually, I have one other friend, similar. He went into a coma, and coming out of that, changed his whole life.
So I don't know anything different because when I had my first open heart surgery, I was 9, but found out that I was going to have it when I was like 8, basically. So my life has always been this way, so I don't know anything different. I then had to have a second emergency open heart surgery in my late 20s where, thank God, the doctors caught it, but I was a ticking time bomb. So I consider myself 2 times on the open heart surgery front where I was very close to being a goner. And then separately from that, I also got in a really bad car accident when I first moved to LA. My car flipped over the 10 freeway into oncoming traffic, and I rolled multiple times and thought that I was going to die then too, and I had not a scratch on me. So
wow.
There are 3 times where I feel like I've had near-death experiences, and I can't necessarily say how it makes me different because I've only known this, but what I can talk about is things that are important to me that I just don't think that other people maybe fully realize, which are your job is a means to make money. It doesn't matter. I love my job so much, but it's a means to make money, to have time to go do things with loved ones and conquer life experiences and go on the vacation and do all that the memes say to do. So that's incredibly important to me. You can love your job, but you can also understand at the same time that in what we're doing, we're not curing cancer. We're doing really cool things, but it's not that deep. And so you need to have a boundary in your life to go celebrate life, because you read those articles about people when they're on their deathbed and the things that they regret the most. And it's always that they didn't spend enough time with their friends and family and loved ones. The second thing that I've learned is doctor's appointments are doctor's appointments. I used to feel very guilty, especially when I was on the freelance side, about going and taking care of my health. And I find that a lot of people that I work with, especially before the pandemic, would go in and they'd be sick and have a cold and do whatever, or I just broke my arm, but I'm still coming in anyway. And I think that not only is it really bad for your physical being to rush going back to work when you're in those scenarios, you're putting other people in danger. And I think a lot of people learned that during the pandemic, but you're also actually screwing with your own productivity, because when you're sick, you're not actually fully there. So when I had heart surgery the last time, I went back to work 2 weeks later. And I have learned from that was a massive mistake. I actually caused bigger problems in myself because I did that. So that is a lesson that I try to do my best with. It's probably the one that I wish I learned a little bit more, but I try my best to like understand like my medical stuff is a priority. I have to go deal with it. People should do the same. So with my teams, I don't care if it's therapy. A doctor's appointment is a doctor's appointment. You don't have to ask me permission, put it in my calendar, call it a day. So that's another thing. And then I think third is you don't have to accept bullshit. If you're in an abusive work situation or someone's treating you poorly, you don't need to be in that scenario. In whatever way you need to handle it, whether it's talking to HR or leaving for another job in an extreme circumstance or writing LinkedIn posts about coworkers to make them change their behavior, you have to do those sorts of things to protect yourself, because when you are not in your work and you are thinking about work, you're not getting paid for that time. And so if you're spiraling about some interpersonal work relationship, you're not going to be paid enough money to do that. It shouldn't be weighing on you and impacting your life in that way. So I think that's been a lesson I've learned in the past few years of, if something's stressing me out with work or a person stressing me out, I have to resolve it as quickly as possible, because it's not worth it. You could die tomorrow and then you were sitting and thinking about random coworker and the thing that they said about you. It's just not worth it. So I think I'm a little bit more cautious about my emotional investment into things like that, especially when it comes to conflict. And then last but not least, I just think like you only live once, like to use the old phrase YOLO, you just have to do what you want to do. You have to follow your dream in the moment. You've got to follow where your heart is. You've got to go do the thing you need to do in that moment now. There are only so many summers that you have. And so why are you not going to go take the summer Friday? If you've been given that by your company, go take it. The work will be there when you get back. So I try to like work obviously hard, but then I have fun as hard as I work. And I think that a lot of people need to take that mentality, especially at companies with unlimited paid vacation. Go take the paid vacation. Go do it. Go off in the world, explore things, try adventures, and try not to let anything stress you out too much, because it's honestly not that deep.
Yeah, I love that. Well, RJ, I appreciate you taking out the time. Congrats on all your personal success and also
Thank
the
you.
impact.
This is fun. This is great.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.